Hey Fight fans, Ivan the editor here, and today we have something really awesome for you, something that you're probably going to enjoy. We're talking Japanese MMA today, and with me to help me with this task is Sal. I'll introduce him to you, or rather I'll let him introduce himself to you, and we'll go from there. Hey Sal, how are you?
I'm doing good, thanks Ivan. Hey Fight fans, like Ivan said, we're here to talk Japanese MMA and also run down the card for the RIZIN Grand-Prix first round coming up this Saturday or Sunday, depending where you are in the world. We'll talk more about that coming up. But yeah, let's talk Japanese MMA. I think when MMA fans think Japanese MMA, they think some of the best fighters in all of MMA. You have from Sakuraba to Fedor to, the brilliant match that I remember is Sakuraba against Carlos Newton. Such a beautiful display of grappling, very minimal striking, and the crowd was so into it. There's so many fighters that made their name in MMA, from Vanderlei Silva to Shogun Rua, the list goes on, and also some of these Grand Prix events were some of the biggest produced events. So I wanted to talk to you, Ivan, and see what are some of your favorite fighters and some of your favorite fights and highlights of Japanese MMA.
Yeah, as you said, Sal, Japanese fighting, Japanese MMA is something that's really awesome. Like a lot of fans remember the big events of those Grand Prix. And it's something that's kind of rooted in the tradition of Japanese martial arts as well. Like when we talk martial arts, people usually do the association with Japan and all of their native fighters are awesome. But one thing that I really enjoyed a lot was the fact that they really managed to mix a lot of cultures. There are a lot of fighters from all sorts of countries, from all kinds of backgrounds. And, some of my all-time favorite fighters are from that particular era in MMA. Like you said, Fedor Emelianenko, he was awesome. Mirko Cro Cop, the Nogueira brothers, Vanderlei. My absolutely the most favorite match I have from that time has to be the Mirko Cro Cop and Vanderlei Silva fight with one of the most brutal knockouts in history. That's just something that I can't manage to get out of my memory. It's one of the best highlights of all time, I'd say. And in that regard, is there something like in particular style of Japanese MMA that stands out to you, like the style, the way that fights are made?
There is actually. There's a couple of things that really stick out to me about Japanese MMA in terms of how it's different. Number one, it's usually contested in a ring, and the use of soccer kicks and things like that. Such a different thing from Western MMA, and also I think some of the if you'll call them sideshow attractions, from Bob Sapp fighting and Minowa Man and Kazushi Sakuraba fighting these giants, and it was such a spectacle. Also the production of the show and the pageantry and the music and the introductions, and I love how back in the day all of the fighters would come out and get introduced. That was really cool for the fans. And also, I think Japanese MMA has had some of the most important and historic fights as well, where two of the top fighters in their prime met. And a perfect example of that for me is Mirko Cro Cop against Fedor Emelianenko. Both of these guys in their prime, a match that everybody wanted to see. Kind of similar to that old adage of the immovable object and the irresistible force. It's such an important fight at that time, and I can remember exactly where I was watching that, who I was with, and just being on the edge of my seat. So definitely something special about Japanese MMA, and you said it exactly right. It's such a blend of cultures and fighters from all around the world, and something so different and unique to it. What are some of the best moments for you in terms of the setup of the Grand Prix and this tournament style? Are you a fan of tournament style? Are you a fan of super fights?
Yeah, I'm a big fan of the tournament style kind of fighting. Something that really happens to pop out in tournament fighting is the fact that you have like pretty much the setup of all the best people at that time period, and they're matched up evenly in brackets, and you really get to see both super matches in that kind of setup, and the moment where you get to see who's actually the best, and it's really awesome because like you get to see the literal progression of your fighters mixing with all sorts of stuff. Like you can prepare, say you're a striker, like you do primarily striking. You're a boxer, you're a kickboxer, and you're matched up like with someone who has similar style to yours in the first bracket. Say you defeat him. The next bracket, no one guarantees you that you won't match up with someone who's a grappler, who's from a BJJ background or from a judo background. And back in those days, like people weren't like training everything. They were, but a lot of people relied on the styles that they were brought up with, and it was really an interesting blend of styles compared to each other. That was awesome. And something you said like about Fedor Emelianenko. Something about him is that he comes from the combat sambo background along with other Russian fighters, and that was pretty much the only thing that was close to the MMA we see today, like everything, ground game, stand up, and so on. And with these brackets, with the way things were structured, you really got to see styles matching to each other and fighters matching to each other. And in that regard, it was really awesome. One thing that I've always wondered, and you can say about yourself, that did we really see the best matchups though in those brackets? Like, did the best fighters actually manage to progress timely?
That's a good question, and the thing that I really look back into in terms of the tournament style is some of these fighters. The thing that pops out to me the most is the birth of a legend in the sport in Shogun Rua, and the way he went through that tournament. I mean, you got to remember in that division, there were some of the absolute best fighters of that time. You had Shogun Rua, you had Alistair Overeem, you had Chuck Liddell, you had Dan Henderson, you had Ricardo Arona, Little Nog, and on and on and on. Rampage Jackson, Sakuraba, you had all these fighters in that weight division. And that, to me, that single tournament with Shogun prevailing, he had won a tournament earlier in his career, but really burst onto the scene and became a legend in that tournament. So that's something that really sticks out for me in terms of the level of competition that Shogun faced in that tournament, and to come out on top. It's hard to get the best matchups when guys are in their prime and they're fighting for different organizations. But I think Japanese MMA did a really good job of bringing in the best talent from around the world and really showcasing it. So that's something that I really remember is Shogun's win in that tournament.
When you started to discuss that weight division in particular, I really got kind of that throwback feeling when you said Rampage Jackson. I remembered the way he used to slam people when they tried to armbar him, like those kind of pro wrestling style slams in an actual ring, doing actual damage, and that's something that he didn't try very often outside of his career in Japanese promotions, which is something interesting. Those kind of promotions promoted showmanship, and that was like the most interesting thing about them. The big throws, the big slams, like Kevin Randleman slamming Fedor Emelianenko, that was a brutal slam. Like, you don't see those kinds of risky moves being pulled off anywhere else, pretty much. A lot of highlight moments in terms of like pure grappling matches as well. And you also mentioned like guys like Chuck Liddell and Alistair Overeem, who used to put on a clinic in terms of kickboxing and pure striking ability. One thing I really kind of associate Japanese MMA with also is, as you said previously, the kind of the freak show fights, the sideshow fights. And one thing that I really kind of have in my mind, like imprinted, is the Don Fry versus Yoshihiro Takayama bout with the clinch fighting and the elbows and the punches. Like, like pumping each other in the face. It was kind of like a surreal moment because you have like your Western organizations where you see these guys squaring off, being tactical and all sorts of things, and all of a sudden you get these two guys that go at it in the clinch. But to tell you the god honest truth, like one of my most standout things was Charles Crazy Horse Bennett, and I don't know if you have a favorite memory from him, but he's really kind of the guy that embodied him and Mayhem Miller actually embodied the showmanship to me from that era.
Absolutely, and I'll just go back one step to the Don Fry and the Don Fry fight that you were mentioning. I don't know if some people will get this reference. I'm a little bit older, but Rock'em Sock'em Robots was this game where the two robots are punching each other, and the winner would win when the other robot's head would come off. And it just reminded me so much watching that fight. Neither man was willing to back down. Like you said, you could be tactical, you could try to slip a punch, you could try to duck under, go for a takedown, and they would not back down. They were holding each other and punching, and it was such a surreal moment. And that to me is kind of hand-to-hand combat and competition at its best, where the will of these fighters, neither guy is going to break, and so it come down to the physical, whose body is going to break first, very much like the Rock'em Sock'em Robots. So it's really cool to be able to see that, and Japanese MMA is this platform for it that you don't really see anywhere else, and that kind of leads us into the upcoming RIZIN Grand-Prix Round 1 coming up this weekend, and we have a huge mix of international talent. We have a huge mix of weight classes and special rules matches. One of the things that I really like is that the balance of the card. There's seven male fights and 4 female fights, and you look from top to bottom. It's a very interesting card, and you have the Bantamweight Grand Prix right in the thick of things. So I wanted to get into that a little bit more, and also let the fight fans know that we will be airing RIZIN Grand Prix Round 1 this Saturday or Sunday, depending where you are. That's going to be Sunday 1 a.m. Eastern and Saturday 10 p.m. Pacific. Give us your thoughts on the way this card shakes out.
It's actually not very interesting. It's really awesome, and you have a really nice blend of everything we talked about up until this point. You have awesome fights lined up. You have a couple of more show style fights, and you have the tournament scheme. You have the entire schematic of the tournament laid out, so it's pretty much gonna have that old school vibe that RIZIN has within it. And as you said, we have the women's matches, which is something that's always a great addition. One thing that stands out to me, especially in the women's matches, is the presence of Gabi Garcia, which is kind of the fighter to watch in terms of the female part of the competition for me. She's kind of really grown into her MMA career, not just her grappling career, and it's been really fun watching her evolve, and I'm really looking forward to her match. Also, the Grand Prix matches are going to be really awesome, and I really wanted to get your thoughts on those because we have 2 UFC vets on the eliminator matches. What do you think? How are things going to shape up there?
Well, so when I look at the card top to bottom, and I have the card with me right here, obviously the match that stands out to me is the main event. You got Horiguchi against Hideo Tokoro. I think a lot of hardcore fans will recognize those names. 2 really great fighters, and this to me is the match on paper that I'm looking forward to the most. I think that and the Nasukawa fight are probably going to be 2 of the most action-packed, and I think it also has the potential to be the most technical fight of the night, which is something that I enjoy. So for me, that's the fight that I'm really looking forward to the most. The Otsuka Birchak fight is going to be very interesting. Birchak is no stranger to a lot of hardcore MMA fans. Very, very tough, gritty fighter. And Otsuka, I think, it's a very interesting matchup for these two. I think if I had to lean one way, I think I'm leaning towards Otsuka, but you can't discount Birchak and his experience and his grittiness. One of the fights that to be honest, is kind of a question mark for me is the Ishibashi and Taha fight. That's the second fight in the Grand Prix, and two very physically powerful guys. That's something where I can't make a call there. I wanted to see if you had some insight into that match.
Yeah, that's actually something that I'm really looking forward to, and to tell you the god honest truth, I think it's going to be a pretty interesting bout because it's a clash of styles. Of what I've seen of both of them, both of Khalid and of Ishibashi, I think that Ishibashi has an edge because of his superior grappling. I've seen him do a lot of interesting stuff, especially with his takedowns. And usually, when it's a case of someone with superior grappling combined with a good takedown technique, usually things tend to go the way of that fighter. But Khalid himself is no stranger to MMA and to all-rounded fighting in general. I think his power lies primarily in his hands. He's a powerful guy, so we'll see how things shape up. But I'm going the way of Ishibashi.
Ishibashi, okay. So I think right now, so you're going for Ishibashi. In the other fight, I'm picking Otsuka. For the main event, I gotta go with Tokoro. He's been around for a long time. He's a guy that's paid his dues. I really enjoy his fighting style. Like I said, that's the fight for me that kind of I'm looking forward to the most in terms of on paper. Let's talk about some of these female fighters, and you alluded to Gabby Garcia. This is going to be interesting. She's going up against a Russian boxer and arm wrestler. Oksana is very, very big. She's not going to have... I believe she actually outweighs Gabby Garcia. She's listed at 220 pounds at 5 foot... I think it's 5'9", 5'10".
That's a tight frame.
So very powerfully built women. But as you mentioned, Gabby Garcia, a very strong grappling background. How do you think she'll do against this Russian boxer, who, by the way, is making her MMA debut in this fight?
Yeah, that's kind of the thing. Like, I come from a boxing background myself, and when I've tried doing any MMA, what would usually happen is I use my orthodox boxing stance, and I end up on my back. And that's a place where a boxer that really doesn't want to be. Like, on your back with a powerful grappler on top of you is a nasty place. And I hope that Oksana is working hard on her ground game, because Gabby Garcia is not going to stand there and eat punches in the face. Like, that's pretty much a given. The question here is, though, to me at least, can Gabby pull off a game plan where she can take down Oksana without getting hit? Because that's something that, like we've seen matchups like Randy Couture versus James Toney, where the grappler pretty much managed to throw the boxer on his back. But you also have the Team Sylvia versus Ray Mercer thing, where that didn't really go that well for Team Sylvia. So it's gonna be interesting. However, just from like personal experience, I'm gonna have to go with Gabby Garcia. Plus, aside from the fact that she is a really experienced grappler, she's experienced in MMA as well. And she's been around like the greats. And another thing that I want to add to this that I kind of didn't manage to throw in previously. Russians have a pretty orthodox boxing stance, pretty tight, very amateur-like stances. That's pretty much applicable to every Eastern European style boxer. The left hand high, the power hand on the cheek, and no feints. It's pretty straightforward kind of thing, and that's a style that I think doesn't land well to Gabby Garcia overall. But something really interesting about this fight that you don't see around the world as much: a heavyweight women's fight. That's awesome. Yeah.
And I think looking at one of the other female fights of the night, you also have King Reina. Coming back again, and she kind of if you will, spoiled that kind of super fight between Gabby Garcia and Jazzy Gabbard, and really, I think pulled off the upset in that fight, in a David versus Goliath type fight. So I'm very interested to see King Reina. I think she embodies that kind of Japanese showmanship, and she comes from that grappling background, and I'm always interested to see her fight, to see what she does next, and she's just as interesting outside of the ring as she is in the ring. So I'm definitely looking forward to that fight. There's two more female fights on the card, and Shinju is one of the kind of very hyped stars in female Japanese MMA today. I think a lot of people are looking for her to make a splash. This could be one of those fights where is this a gimme fight to pump her up, or does she have a real challenger up against her? What are your thoughts on that fight?
Thing is, like, when you have a young fighter such as her, like, do you throw her straight into the deep water and see if she can make the big splash you were talking about? Or do you try to maybe sort of build her up to a point where she could potentially take those bigger bouts? I think that they're trying to match her with her equal here. I am expecting fireworks. She's like really snug with her style, like she's packing. I do think that this is going to be an interesting match. I'm not of the opinion that she's going to blast through her opponent, but I do have her winning though.
And so just for the fans at home, I want to make sure that everybody mark this on your calendar, put a reminder on your phone, make sure you get the times right. FITE.tv is going to air RIZIN Grand-Prix first round live Saturday, 10 p.m. Pacific time, and Sunday, 1 a.m. Eastern time. So make sure you get your times right. I also want to tell the fans at home that we are going to be airing the first fight of this card completely free on Facebook Live on the FITE TV Facebook page. So stay tuned for that. Follow us on social to make sure you get your times straight, make sure you catch these fights, and also join us in the live chat. Now, one of the other fights that I wanted to kind of talk about here, because I think he's one of the best heavyweight prospects in the world, is Amir Alakbari. I think he is a great heavyweight prospect. His only loss has come to an MMA legend in Mirko Krokop. I think this is a fight here for him to make a statement and show that he's one of the best heavyweights in the world. What are your thoughts on Alakbari as a fighter and also this matchup?
Like, I don't mean to disparage anybody, but I think that this matchup is going to be a sure win for him. Like, just my thoughts on the thing. He's a really tough guy, really big, powerful guy. He is, to me at least, he is the future of the heavyweight division. He has a place in organizations both in Japan and everywhere else around the world. I think that pretty much real soon the entire world is gonna hear of him. And I'm not sure, like, a lot of MMA fans are kind of missing out on these fighters that are not as well known in the West. And I think that they're kind of sleeping on him. But I think that he is the kind of guy to deliver a highlight reel kind of fight. And I'm pretty sure that he's gonna make his mark real soon. I'm looking forward to that actually. But I'm not sure that this fight in particular is gonna be a highlight of skills per se, but rather I think that he's going to go through the fight blazing.
I agree. I think, Tyler King, 12-5 MMA record, no slouch. But when you look at the talent of Alakbari, I think you're right. I think Alakbari, this is his stage for him to make a huge statement. It's his fight to lose, but really the stage is set for him to make a huge splash. And speaking of huge splashes, I think one of the most dynamic strikers in Japan today, whether it be kickboxing or MMA, you have Nasukawa, who put on a brilliant display in the last RIZIN event, Sakura. This is an interesting matchup here. He's matched up against Saiga, and it's two strikers, but it's a mixed rules match, meaning that the first round will be contested in mostly kickboxing striking rules, and then round 2 will be contested in MMA rules. Well, what are your thoughts on that, and what are your thoughts on Nasukawa as a fighter? Very, very young fighter, very flashy, a lot of hype behind him.
Nasukawa is an awesome fighter. I think that, like, if you want to get as a fan a better idea of what flashy, effective striking looks like, you should watch his highlight reels. He's just awesome in that regard. I think that he can put on a show that just about anyone can enjoy, from a hardcore fan to a casual fan, mostly because of the way he handles himself in the ring. You know, the kind of rule set that they're going to use for this particular matchup is awesome for both competitors, because, like, you have two guys that are very experienced in striking, and they're going to manage to duke it out in like the form that they love to do it, like in kickboxing style. But then you get to see those same kinds of styles clash in an MMA kind of rule set, which is really interesting to observe. And I pretty much tend to think that the winner of the match is going to be the guy that manages to pull off the kickboxing round better, because you're going to be spent the next go around. Like, pretty much every time you get a hard kick to the liver or a nasty body shot, you're going to get drained, and those are the kind of guys that throw all sorts of nasty techniques: spinning back kicks, spinning back fists, liver kicks. We're going to see just about everything we can from this fight, I think.
I agree with you. I think it's also interesting, and we've seen this in the past with some of these mixed rule fights in Japanese MMA, where the first part of it, if it's contested with, let's call it K1 rules, they're using kickboxing gloves, and then between rounds, they still have their hand wraps on, they switch to MMA gloves. So I think it's going to be very interesting who's going to be able to do more damage in the first round, contested under kickboxing striking rules, and then also if one of them has the energy to kind of turn it up and really make use of those small 4-ounce gloves and maybe land a strike, a knockout blow in the second, or if they decide to try to grapple, wear the other person down, because they will have spent some energy. So it's a great matchup, and I think that is one of those matches that kind of takes it back to, this is what's different about Japanese MMA. You get these different rule sets, and this is kind of smack dab right in the middle of the card. So I think that's a really good change of pace to mix things up, and it has a chance to be very flashy, as Nasukawa's fights tend to be. It's definitely really looking forward to this fight, all in all.
You know, one thing that actually, in regards to the mixed rules, one thing that a lot of fans probably, they do realize it, but they don't probably get an accurate perspective on it, is the fact that game plan tends to change drastically with the change of gloves, as you said. Like, when you have the big 10-ounce gloves, you pretty much have a different style of defense going on there. And, you can absorb a lot of shots using the big 10-ounce gloves, which you can do with the 4-ounce gloves. And per se, they keep the pacing on the feet, like the entire match on the feet, both with the 10-ounce gloves and the 4-ounce gloves. We're gonna see two different styles of striking from round to round. And just as you said, that's the thing that kind of tends to differentiate Japanese MMA from Western style MMA, because you just don't see such things in Western style MMA. You don't get such crossovers between rule sets, between fighters, and so on and so forth. And this particular matchup, I think, is going to have that little bit of punctuation to why this is the premium show in terms of Japanese MMA, and why fans have to see this. This is pretty unique.
I agree wholeheartedly. I, for one, am looking forward to this entire fight card. I think, as always with Japanese MMA, there's always the chance that you get an instant classic in any one of these cards, and you never know where it's going to come from, which I think is great in terms of that surprise factor. And once again, fight fans at home, be sure to join us in live chat. We'll be there live chatting with all of our fans. be sure to stay tuned to social media to make sure you catch the Facebook Live free fight from RIZIN Grand-Prix Round 1 and also RIZIN Sakura. I think we've done a great job kind of running down the card, building the excitement, looking forward to this. Are there any closing comments that you have, Ivan?
Well, pretty much the only one is that, to me at least, this is the show to watch this summer, and I'm really looking forward to it. And as you said, I really hope our fans enjoy it because it's going to be awesome. It's been really great talking to you, so like you are a resident MMA expert here, and you have certainly a really good perspective on everything in the MMA world. So I really hope our fans enjoy the kind of things you had to say on the on this show. And yeah, that's pretty much it.
Awesome. Well, I look forward to doing another segment with you. We have a lot of huge announcements coming up this summer with FITE TV. So be sure to stay tuned on social media for all the announcements. And once again, be sure to join us in the live chat for RIZIN Grand-Prix Round 1 this Saturday or Sunday, as the case may be, depending where you are, 10 p.m. Pacific Time and 1 a.m. Eastern Time. This is South Rio signing off. Thanks for joining.
Thank you, fight fans, and remember to fight like you mean it.